everyone, and welcome back to the news. It's 2021 now, pretty exciting new generation of games and news. Sorry for our absence though, we are making some very big changes behind the scenes for this channel, working very hard on some new big content for you to enjoy. There will be more on that in our channel update video, which will be out pretty soon. Right now though, of course, there's one reason why we're all here, and that is the news. First, the myriad of stories that you may not be aware of. A lot has happened. Some crazy, bad, odd things at the start of the year too. Like the story of the company selling custom black PS5s that cancelled all their orders because of threats. The story here is simple, right? They customized some PS5s with a PS2 style aesthetic. They offered their limited quantity for sale, and then everything went very downhill from there on. Site problems, taking payment with no secure order, the whole works. Upset people resorted to things like death threats, and the company basically just noped out. Essentially, a big old disaster. Speaking of something that could lead to a big old disaster, we've also had the news that EA has officially beaten Take-Two in the acquisition fight over Codemasters. So that's big racing game franchises going to EA. Will they unceremoniously destroy Codemasters, as EA's history would suggest? I mean, maybe, but also maybe this new and perhaps improved EA that has learnt the lessons of Respawn Entertainment will do better than we've been trained to expect. Next up then, we've got our first epic story of the year, and they really did start the year off on the wrong foot. So, Hitman 3, an Epic exclusive, includes the option to play levels from the older games, but with the upgrades that Hitman 3 introduces. And for free, if you've already owned those games. And you know what? That sounds pretty sweet. Otherwise, though, you would have to buy those games separately. Now, the way it worked is that Hitman 1 levels were going to be free for the first 10 days, but there's no way to verify your Hitman 2 ownership on Epic if you, say, bought it on another platform. And that's just not cool, because a platform change, because of an exclusivity deal, that shouldn't be shafting over existing customers. People were mad, rightly so, but thankfully they've got their way. Epic and IO have agreed with them and are working on a solution. They've basically they've guaranteed that no repurchasing will be necessary. Tim Sweeney went on to tweet that they never intend to force people to rebuy games on Epic to get content. So, hopefully he actually does mean that. Now, speaking of getting content, go to nordvpn.com/Bellular News, promo code Bellular News, to get a 2-year plan with a huge discount and a free month. Now, why get a VPN? It's simple. Do you want to watch content from another region? Maybe a Netflix? Easy. Use their 5,000 plus servers to choose your location. Use the internet like you are there. They also keep you private. Your ISP won't know what sites you use or what you're up to, so they can't sell your browsing data to advertisers, and they also can't prioritize some of the sites and types of traffic that you use over others. Also, NordLocker, they do that. I mean, here in the UK, 500 gigs of secure storage for only £1.10. Wow. And NordPass as well for your passwords. The app and the browser extension are super easy to use, and that is all nordvpn.com/Bellular News or code Bellular News to get a 2-year plan with a big old discount plus an additional month for free. So, good stuff. A big thank you to Nord for supporting what we do, and let's get into the news. In more positive news then, Sony shared, with no real fanfare, a bunch of updated release windows for games. This is great. None of it's too surprising though, a bunch of games are coming out across 2021. But the fun thing here is that Project Athia is coming out in 2022, and that's leading everyone to believe that Square Enix will fill 2021's schedule with Final Fantasy XVI, which gives it an announcement to release timeframe of about a year. That's a little bit faster than Final Fantasy XV's 10-year gap. Now, this info also says that Capcom's Pragmata is due out in 2023 instead of 2022. That makes it the second game to see delays right as 2021 starts, as Hogwarts Legacy has also been pushed back from 2021 to 2022. And generally speaking, I would say expect that for so many 21 games. And you know what? It's actually good to see these delays maybe be proactive instead of be reactionary. As long as the delays are long enough for the teams to actually make sure that, we as the customers get good quality products. Maybe a bunch of teams saw what happened with Cyberpunk and maybe they've thought to themselves, could this be a culture shift in gaming where audiences are just going to be fed up of getting these subpar products, because we'd expect it from EA, but now even the good guys are doing it to us. I mean, surely it's just untenable to launch a mess of a game these days. Now, in news-related news, and this is very hype for me, Tyler McVicker, known for his extremely in-depth coverage of Valve history and insider knowledge, well, he is promising a 2021 that is full of news from his many sources, including big news from inside Bethesda, Obsidian, and Nintendo. And while not really a story itself, he did tease content on upcoming games, including New Vegas 2. Yeah, so that's the news. Apparently, there's a New Vegas 2 in the works. Awesome. Awesome. I think that will make people very happy. Well, on to our first big story, and what better way to start a new year off than a big old callback to 2020. Cyberpunk 2077. A bunch has happened. Now, as we're all aware, its launch was a nightmare for console players and even some PC gamers, and then for the console people to the point where Sony yanked it from the PS Store, setting a rather new precedent for how bad a launch can go. Anthem was reportedly bricking consoles and Sony still kept that one up. First in our catch-up, the Jason Schreier article. To be honest, there's not a massive amount there. The TLDR is that Jason's sources essentially confirmed to him essentially what we already knew. In his words, unchecked ambition, poor planning, and technical shortcomings. And I think when you compare the feature sets that were talked about sort of earlier on in the hype cycle for this game and then what we got at launch, yeah, it's obvious that all of those things happened. Although we did talk to 20 sources, and we now, I suppose, have it a bit better sourced. Apparently, a focus on marketing at the expense of development and unrealistic timelines caused developers to, crunch a lot and really quite early. It's the same thing that we've come to obviously expect from the industry's many fallen titans. They've got ambition and faith that it'll all work out in the end, but not really the goods to back it up with. Good old bit of BioWare magic, if you remember those stories from a while back. Now, they also made the exact same mistakes that we've seen, AAA devs do across the board. One of them is wasting months on a demo, right? That big demo that impressed everybody? Well, according to Schreier's article, entirely fake. Now, when you actually get into that, it's not really entirely fake. It's more that a whole bunch of custom work was done for that demo to get it there. Obviously, the team would have hoped the entire game would have been representative of that vertical slice demo, but what you essentially have is a bit of an Aliens Colonial Marines vertical slice demo situation, albeit I would say to a slightly lesser degree. Then, of course, the team apparently grew faster than the company could manage. They also restarted development without giving enough time for foundations to be laid, and that was after Adam Badowski came to basically be the head for that project. Really, it's the usual stuff that, we are all quite used to. And it's funny that the most important skill set gamers can have is pattern recognition in the games that we play, but that industry management in the games industry seems to really lack pattern recognition skills. So maybe they should play more games and think about what they're doing. So, Jason did his article. Well, studio head Adam Badowski had a response on Twitter. He thanked Jason for the read, but wanted to address some of the finer points. And on that, and on the point of the demo being fake, he said that that's basically how game dev works, that it's non-linear. And Adam is actually true sometimes. Now, that said, you can go all holds barred, or no holds barred, into a big demo like that. You totally can. And to be really real with you, we've done that in our studio in the past. And what it did for us was completely mislead us, waste time and waste money, and it meant that it took us, many months more than it should have to realize that the project we were working on was a wash that needed to be cancelled. And suffice to say, as the captain of the ship, that cost us a lot of money, and that was a big mistake that I made. So while what Adam is saying is very true, It's the sort of thing where it's still very possible to waste time making gameplay systems or assets wrong just to get them ready for a demo. It's a bit like how if you're doing a university software project, you could be rushing for a deadline, you could write lots of sloppy code and get things working with sellotape, but then when it comes to a full deliverable, you just need to rewrite it anyway to do it right. And that's kind of what it's like in situations like this. It's what we call in the industry technical debt, right? And yeah, it hits every single team, but it just seems to have hit this team particularly hard. We're no stranger to it here anyway, and we're at the very smallest scales, far away from these guys and their crazy big budgets and teams. Now, Adam also disputed that employees speaking non-English languages with each other was a problem. Apparently cultural differences over there could be a problem in the team, but at least when it comes to language, CD Projekt Red's internal rule is to use English, right, so that everybody understands. So, I mean, you know, fair criticisms of Jason's article could feel a little bit nitpicky, but that does mean that it reveals the kind of truth here. Badowski, I think, tacitly did accept a bunch of the criticism there. Now, Jason's article came not long after some official communications. This is when the CEO, Marcin Owinski, released a video basically owning up to problems and giving his side of the story.
When I started CD Projekt 25 years ago, one of its founding principles was honest and direct communication with gamers. 2077 did not meet the quality standard we wanted it to meet. I and the entire leadership team are deeply sorry for this, and this video is me publicly owning up to that. As we got closer to the final release, we saw significant improvements each and every day, and we really believed we would deliver in the final Day Zero update.
And if that is true, then sure thing, it's true, but it still is unacceptable and that should never have been sold. Basically, that meant that they expected to hit just much better results by the time launch came, but that they underestimated the scope of that. He then reiterated the plans for Cyberpunk that they have not changed, but that they have been delayed as the priority is on fixing the existing version of the game before releasing DLC and next-gen versions in the second half of this year. And this is all expanded upon on their website, including claims that testing didn't pick up on many of the issues that players experienced, which honestly is not an excuse for a multi-billion-dollar company. And I mean, if you show me 5 people who played that game on console or even in PC, and almost all of them will have seen a bunch of the same issues. I mean, I did see loads within my first 20 minutes of playing, and I was on a very ideal system. At the end of the day, right, the story from Marcin, it reiterates what's been reported elsewhere, essentially. They bit off more than they could chew. They expanded their team real big, but too fast. They crunched their team, and they decided to release the game anyway, and it really wasn't ready. And if we take Marcin at his word, then this was basically just all cascading failures that came from their ambition, and that they're sorry. Accepting responsibility, though, it's not just about being the person who steps up in front of the camera, though. If Marcin wants to take this bullet, he needs to enact real, visible change, and he's got to do it decently quick, right? This is the kind of mistake you get to make once, and once alone, and then you have to fix your ways. Now, this initiative to regain our trust, it doesn't come without a few incentives. A few days before they released their video, they were actually given an ultimatum by the Polish Office of Competition and Consumer Practice. That's not a group you want to be getting a letter from if you're in Poland, eh? Now, they basically said, fix your game or we'll start taking your profits. Ouch. Apparently, CD Projekt Red absolutely tanking their reputation after being the shining star of Poland didn't sit well with the government. I believe they were, in fact, the largest company in Poland at a stage. Maybe they still are. The details are scarce here, but the story tells itself. If they think that progress and fixes is unacceptable, then bam, they'll fine CD Projekt Red 10% of their profits. So that's kind of interesting. I mean, that's a customer protection group in a country actually using the powers vested to them to mitigate anti-consumer behavior. So that certainly is interesting. I think we're all rather used to those government bodies being very, very toothless indeed. So it certainly is interesting to see, and absolutely the screw is tightening for CD Projekt Red. But man, those poor devs cannot catch a break. Heart goes out to the people working in that game. Marcin promised they were not doing any obligatory overtime. but if a fine is coming in, they might suggest a lot of voluntary overtime instead, because 10% of the company's profits is quite a lot when they've sold, 13 million copies. So hopefully the government body in charge of labour laws and worker treatment are also keeping a little bit of an eye there. Realistically, though, I think overall it does sound great. They're kind of getting their comeuppance, but, you know, it all might not mean that much. It was already in CD Projekt Red's best interest to fix the console versions anyway, and they still released it without those being fixed. So, I mean, for their reputation and their relationship with the Sony and fans, they needed to get that right, and they didn't. So hopefully this from Poland is a warning shot to others who release barely playable games. But, I mean, considering it's CD Projekt Red are basically the big game company in Poland, it's probably only them who could possibly invoke their ire. But let's be honest though, our industry's full of chancers. Now I don't know if you're listening in America and you don't know what a chancer is in the local lingo of Northern Ireland, but someone who's a chancer, you know, they're all just going to chance their arm, right? They're just going to try to pull it off. And you know what? Maybe they are a pack of chancers, because even though all this terrible news happened, it didn't stop them from selling 13 million copies. Speaking of barely playable games, we've got a teaser for another big project that's coming out of Bethesda. And it is an Indiana Jones game by Machine Games. Now, Machine Games are the studio behind Wolfenstein, so that could be quite cool. The best part, Todd Howard, who is a massive Indiana Jones fan, is actually taking the executive producer role. So that's interesting. Todd moving around the place. Now, it's that sort of thing where everyone's got opinions, and Todd, the man certainly does run his mouth and creates some very interesting expectations that often his games do not fill. But I would say that Todd Howard is a big name there, and perhaps him being attached to this does let you know that there is some confidence in the project and some institutional willingness to give it the resources and the time, etc. Now, as always, the AAA announcement, though, we basically know nothing about it. It's, I think, unfair to assume it's going to be an Uncharted clone. I mean, you could totally see that, but we can be pretty sure that it's going to try to be Xbox's attack on Sony's narrative adventure dominance. Because if you want a narrative adventure, you kind of have to go Sony these days. Now, by the way, if you forgot that Xbox owned Bethesda until just now, don't worry, this whole thing still sounds a bit odd to me as well. Like the idea of Todd Howard, you know, working in Indiana Jones, probably Xbox Game Pass game. But the real takeaway here is to get ready for the Zoomers to call Indiana Jones a rip-off of Nathan Drake. Can't wait for that. Indy is probably not a popular figure amongst the youth these days, but as the aging protagonists and the user base of AAA games may suggest, I think it'll work just fine. Certainly, I'd be interested. As far as the game itself goes, though, it'll be interesting to see how this FPS-only studio will adapt to this new challenge, of course, with Xbox's support, which probably means they just have a lot more resources to get shit done. One of the bigger bits of news tied in with the indie stuff is the effective reformation of Lucasfilm's games. This is really cool. With mostly a week showing from EA's 10-year-long Star Wars deal, and that deal coming to an end in 2023, it's of course now time for Disney to rethink how they can milk their cash cow IPs. And of course, if you've been paying attention to, say, the stock market or Disney in general, they've really been going hard on the idea of a recurring revenue bundle in the form of Disney+. I mean, hey, probably there'll be a time in the future where Disney Plus will get you stuff in Disney cruises and Disney theme parks, because that's what they want to do. It's a bit like how Apple made their sort of subscription of subscriptions. So Disney and their IP, that is mega important stuff to them, and they're finally paying a bit more attention to it, because obviously Star Wars had a rough period. Lucasfilm's game's coming back, and it's basically coming back in a big way to manage their properties and essentially pull off, I would say, the next generation of Lucasfilm's related video game projects. And they've already got plenty in the works. The first announcement here was Indiana Jones, of course. But then we heard about an Ubisoft Star Wars game from the Division developers Massive Entertainment. That's really interesting to me. We've got them working with Ubisoft. We've got them working with Bethesda and Microsoft. I think what this means that if there is a team with or a company with the team and the budget and the wherewithal, the capabilities and a great idea, maybe it's now a situation where Disney would be open to some form of licensing agreement for their IP. Now, of course, this does not mean the end of Star Wars at EA. EA have done great things with Fallen Order. There's going to be a sequel to that as well. But I think what this is Lucasfilm trying to diversify who works with them. And this is really good, I think, for us as people who are consumers of content who want to see great video games come out. Because, I mean, man, you think about Star Wars games, I mean, Empire at War, Rogue Squadron, there was so much great stuff back in the day. Now, they really don't have much that's beyond, Star Wars and indie though, but they do have a history, of course, of classics they could revive. Monkey Island, Mercenaries, that's all stuff that's going on there. I mean, this is a generation that is primed for an onslaught of IP tie-ins and revivals, so it certainly is interesting. I would then also say, if you're somebody who enjoyed the Mandalorian television series, I'd say you could be in for a good time. Now, Star Wars 1313, is that coming back? No. But The Mandalorian is something that I think in the eyes of many people who like Star Wars really turned things around after, a very divisive middle film, and then Rise of Skywalker essentially seeming to be trash. But Mandalorian was really good. And Mandalorian, in fact, ended up being so good and drove so much positive sentiment for them that the Galaxy's Edge stuff. Now, Galaxy's Edge is basically the Star Wars sort of Disney theme park area. From what I understand, they're actually bringing more Mandalorian influence and design and stuff into Galaxy's Edge. And they're actually, there's only so much floor space. They're doing that at the expense of reboot trilogy content. So, I'm not saying we're going to get some form of, Fett or Mandalorian related game, but given that did really well to the point where where Disney are realigning some of their existing Star Wars investments a bit more towards Mandalorian, yeah, you might get a Mandalorian game. You know what, that'd be pretty cool, because they're pretty cool dudes. I really enjoy playing one in the EA MMO. It's actually, you know what, the EA MMO is not half bad if you want a fun Star Wars experience. I'd say just play it for the story, though. Anyway, that is it. Keep an eye on this channel for the update video where we're just going to be taking you through what we're doing this year. A lot of big changes. We're trying to do things right. It's that sort of thing, right? Long-term thinking and sort of long-term decision-making, that's what gives you long-term results. And we've been trying to think, how do we make content that feels a bit more unique, that is giving you guys a lot more value and also a lot more entertainment. So that's what we're really working on. And you'll see the results, I believe, within a fortnight from you watching this video, perhaps even sooner. A massive thank you to the patrons as well. We've got plenty in store for you guys as well. So that is it for me. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time.